Hello, everyone. Good vibes. This is your Good Morning Minute, and I have Vitelle. She is an actress, she is an author, and an entrepreneur. She has got so many hats on, and I'm excited to have her as a guest speaker today on our Good Morning Minute show. So, Vitelle's going to talk about thriving against the odds, a story of resilience and triumphing. We're going to talk about those significant challenges and hardships that she happened to manage through and not only persevere and overcome, but succeed and excel. So I'm excited to introduce her. Go ahead, Vitel. Go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners.
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. So it's your girl Vitelle, as I like to say. And yes, that was an amazing introduction. You pretty much listed it all. I wear a lot of hats, but the most important one is that, like you said, I'm using my testimony to help others to thrive. And that's the most important thing to me out of all the hats that I wear. So I'm really excited to be here on your show today and to talk about whatever it is that you need me to share. I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. So thriving against the odds, that's just what it is. I mean, sometimes we come from places that aren't equipped for us to be immediately successful. We have to create that path for ourselves. And
Exactly.
I just kind of want to know what kind of odds or maybe challenges did you face in your life journey?
So I would like to say that I'm the poster child for trauma because when you name it, I probably experienced it. I have experienced a lot of trauma. Mostly, I think the main one that kind of ran a course through my life is abuse, because that starts in childhood a lot of the times, and you continue it on throughout your life. The people that you're attracted to, the people that you spend time with, and they end up abusing you the same way you were as a child. And so that's something that is just seems like a never ending cycle sometimes. So it's really a matter for me of breaking the cycle of generational poverty, the cycle of abuse. And that was one of the main ones. But I do have a show called Nine Lives that I kind of break down all the characters. Each character represents a different type of trauma. So in order for me to even tell my story, I literally needed nine different characters to play it. This is the characters here that I play, all the nine characters, and each one of them represents a different traumatic experience that I have been through. So that just goes to show how much that I could go on forever talking about. But basically, I break it down from homelessness. I experienced homelessness as a
Mm,
child, and then as an adult again, the cycle of poverty. It's all cycles. Also divorce, depression, suicidal ideation, all of these things all tied together, and trauma, because it all stems from trauma. It's all a result of trauma. And yeah, it's now I'm able to look back on it and say that it's a blessing, the things that I've been through, because if I hadn't experienced them myself, I wouldn't be able to help people in the way that I am now. But when you're going through it, it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
hmm
And acting, everything that I was doing, writing, that all really helped me to get through it. It was therapy for me to know, hey, I'm writing my story as I'm going through this, because one of these days I'm going to be able to share this story, and it's going to help someone else. So I always kind of had my eye on the prize throughout everything that I was going through. And now here I am living in it, looking back on it like, wow, I really went through all of these things.
Yeah.
So yeah, that pretty much sums it up, I guess.
And I mean, and that in itself is just phenomenal because I mean, I come from a similar background as well. And it is hard during those times to look at it and go, okay, well, people say life is happening for me, not to me, but how is this for me? All this trauma, these situations. But I think you also mentioned in your beginning there that you take what you learned from this trauma and you replicate it in your relationships as you become a young adult and you start seeing bits and pieces of that in your life as you continue to grow. And so tell me, because you've got these amazing things going on now, but it wasn't always that. So how did you know
Right.
how to prioritize, like, I think I'm going to tackle this first, and then I'm going to tackle this? Because we look at everything in our life and go, oh my gosh, I've got homelessness, I've got this going on, I've got that going on. I don't know where to even start. And we just throw our hands up in the air and just live in it, right?
Yeah.
But that keeps us in that cycle. And you're talking about breaking that cycle. So how
Mhm.
did you learn to prioritize and to tackle what challenge first? What was that like for you? And what did you tackle first?
That's a really good question. I don't know that anyone's ever asked me it in that way before because I don't know that I had like a certain order that I tackled it in really. And now that you mention it, like you got me thinking now because even in sharing my testimony, not even just tackling it, but sharing my testimony afterward, it's like how do I have so many books that I have to write, so many stories that I have to tell. How do I get this started? And so the show itself my first book was really a compilation of all of it
Mhm,
because, not being able to really tackle one thing at a time or not being able to really focus on one thing at a time. Like, let me just do an overall summary of it all. And then once we have all of it here in this box, then we're able to pull out, one at a time at that point. So I think it kind of works in the same way that I'm handling it when it comes to sharing my story. It kind of worked that way when it comes to tackling it as it came at me too, because you can't really predict these things. And it does, like when it rains, it pours. So it always does seem like that it's all happening at one time. And I just had to learn to take it day by day, deal with it as it came at me. And now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, okay, there was several of these things going on once because I was being abused at the same time that I was homeless. And then, I was going through depression at the same time I was going through divorce. So it's like they all kind of came in pairs and there was
mhm,
no determining how quickly they would come or in what order and things like that. So I never really thought about like in what order I tackled them. I
mhm.
just took it as it came at me. And
Okay.
I guess every one of them really required a lot of prayer, a lot of understanding, a lot of educating myself on what trauma
Mm,
even is,
mhm,
um, and what narcissism is. Like learning about narcissists, I write about that in my book as well. Learning about that was one of the things that really helped me understand, like, wow. And it made me stop beating myself up. It took away a lot of that depression and suicidal ideation that I was having because of the abuse that I'd gone through, and now blaming myself and all of these things that you deal with when you're dealing with that narcissistic personality. It's so huge, like, to educate yourself. So there's really no like blueprint to this as far as
mhm.
how you can tackle it and when and in what order. It's just, one day at a time. What's the quote that they say? How do you eat an elephant? Like one bite at a time. It's
Yeah.
just those cliche things that it really applies to in this situation, because when you do try to tackle it all at once, like sometimes you can get overwhelmed and it can cause more depression. Like you said, just throw up your hands and be stuck. And
Mhm,
you definitely don't want that to happen. I'm sure I've had plenty of moments where it felt like that's exactly what was happening and I was throwing in the towel. But then, you cry it out, you get some rest, and then you kind of pick yourself back up when you're determined to accomplish something. So that's kind of what the process that I went through. It was a lot of giving up and a lot of getting right back up again. And you can't, there's no amount of times that you have to stop doing that. Like there's no limit to the amount of times you can do that.
yeah.
So,
I hear you. And I think what I'm also hearing as you're speaking, like there was no other choice. Like you had to pick it all up and just
right.
manage through it, is what I'm hearing. And for some of us who start in situations like that, like we normalize that. I work with children in the foster care sector of things. And so I see a lot of those traumas and they're normalized. So they don't even realize, you mentioned educating yourself on what trauma was. Like you don't even know that you're being abused or anything like that until you start building an awareness. Um,
Exactly.
and I very much understand that. And when you hit bottom, I mean, you're already starting off at bottom. So when you
Right.
fall again, it's that
Mhm.
much easier. So we're talking resilience now. It's that much easier to bounce back up and continue to strive. Whereas if someone started a little higher up than where you may have started, it may be a little like harder for them to bounce back up because they've never really experienced that bottom.
Right.
until they hit it. So you mentioned prayer, you mentioned crying it out, you mentioned rest as some of those strategies that you implemented or coping mechanisms that you implemented. What else did you do to demonstrate some of that resilience as you faced these challenges?
That's one of those things. It's like that's kind of limitless too,
Hmm.
because some of the things were simple, like just finding different ways to cope, like coloring, reading, writing. These were things that isn't, it's just basic stuff, but you'd be surprised how much coping mechanisms like that will get you through things, especially when it comes to
Hmm.
depression and just dealing with where you are in life. Sometimes it just takes that escape. Some people escape into the gym, some people escape into movies or Netflix or whatever. There's really no limit or no wrong way to do it. Well, there is a wrong way to do it. That would be like drugs and alcohol and things like that. But you know what I
Yeah.
mean? you
Yeah.
know, there,
Yeah.
there's no limit to the possibilities of, just finding a healthy coping mechanism that works for you to cope with whatever it is you're dealing with at that moment. And then I guess just understanding that it's all temporary, like just that fact alone, reminding myself, you think about times when you've been sick, like we've all caught a cold, right? That's something that
Hmm.
everybody on the planet can relate to. At some point in time, we caught a cold. And it's like when you're sick and when you're in that place, then you just feel like you can't do anything, you can't accomplish anything, nothing else matters but getting better. You're just in this place. But you know that eventually you're going to get well. Like this cold does not last for eternity. So I think just looking at it like that and comparing it to something as simple as a cold, even though it's something more major at the time, it's
Yeah.
like it just reminds you that it will soon be over. Like no storm lasts forever. So what can I do in this moment, in this storm, just to ride the wave, just to ride it out? Sometimes there's nothing you can do to actually solve whatever problem might be at
Hmm.
hand, but just finding a way for you to pass the time in a healthy way until you get to the other end of it is sometimes the solution.
Wow, wow. And how much of your mindset, like that self-doubt, how much did that play into the struggle? Because we all have that inner talk, and especially if we don't know any different, you're creating a completely different cycle for yourself and all the generations to come after you. Because we're breaking cycles that we're coming from, right? So you're creating something completely new, something you've never seen before. So how
Mhm.
much of that self-doubt and fear was a challenge for you, and how did you handle it and overcome them?
Man, that is a big one. You must have planned for this. You must have had this stuff written down because you are hitting the nail on the head with all of this. Self-doubt is something else, I tell you. That's about to be a whole nother show in itself, a whole nother character that I'm gonna have to write. Um, when you deal with abuse coming up, and one of the abuses is when I talk about the different forms of abuses, you have the verbal abuse, the mental abuse, and that leaves you thinking that something's wrong with me. And there's, I had so many issues with that growing up, even down to my complexion,
Mhm.
from one white skin to another. I was always I was traumatized. Even then, that aspect of it was a type of trauma for me because I was told that the white man is bad, and I was told that this is what you're not supposed to be. You're not supposed to look like this. Like this was all just this negative bubble, and then to discover that that's part of me, then something must be wrong with me. So you grow up with those feelings
Mhm.
automatically of self-doubt. Self-esteem was shot. And then going from one culture shock to another, I attended an all-black school at one point, and then went from that to an all-white school. And at both of the schools I was rejected because I was never light enough or never dark enough for either one of the schools.
Mm.
So that whole thing growing up really created a lot of self-doubt in me. It took a lot, like years, to get to where I have a self-esteem. And I'll say this, even once you get to the point, it's like I love myself now. I can proudly, be proud of myself, all these things that I never thought I'd get to this point. And now that I'm here, there's still always those moments of self-doubt. Like I don't think that's something that ever goes away. I was speaking to an Emmy Award winner the other day who was saying the same exact thing. And I'm just like, what? Like, you talk about
Mm.
these levels. I'm thinking she's on this higher level than me somehow. And, she deals with self doubt too. Like, right before she goes up to speak and all this stuff. So it just is a reminder that, you know what, I'm a human being. And as long as we're
Mhm.
humans and we're alive, we're going to deal with just different levels of self-doubt, new levels, new devils is what they say, right? So it's like, it's never, it's not something that ever goes away. I don't think. I don't know if I know anyone that, probably even Beyonce, like, you would think Beyonce can possibly have any self-doubt. I can guarantee you, I think I've even heard her say it in an interview or something, that she at some point still has these moments before she goes out on the stage where she's like, what if I mess up? What if they don't like me? What if, like, all that self-doubt going on? So that's something that we all deal with at every
Mhm.
aspect of our life. And I think at each level of that, we have to figure out another way to overcome it. I think for me, it's just a matter of doing it anyway. Like, even
Mhm.
if you do have the self-doubt, it's like you're never going to not fear as a human. If you're completely fearless, you're a psychopath. They have a definition for that. Like, there's no such thing as a completely fearless human being. So you're always going to have that moment of, worry or self-doubt, but then you see that, you address it, you push it to the side, and you say, okay, but I still got to do this. And I think
Mhm.
as long as you're still doing the thing, then the self-doubt doesn't matter. Like, it's probably not even gonna show. Like, it's not gonna come across to other people that you have the self-doubt. It's just something that you had to deal with and put away. And unless you tell somebody, they wouldn't even know, so
Mhm.
that's just a process that I think we always have to go through our lives with the self-doubt. Yeah.
Wow, wow. And and I love how you mentioned fearless. If you're fearless, then there's something else going on.
That's not normal.
Um, but I like that because in my journey, in my own healing journey, like being fearful was kind of an indicator for me to know that I'm stretching beyond my comfort zone. I'm stretching
Exactly.
myself.
That part.
And for most people, it's like, ooh, there's some fear there, and that's my comfort zone barrier. I'm gonna stay back here. But if you
Right.
really want to jump into that, succeed and excel, then you have to jump over that barrier of fear and use it as an indicator of this is just some self-growth happening here.
Mhm. Exactly.
So, speaking of skills, characteristics, and things like that, what do you feel contribute that you pulled from within yourself that contributed to your ability to thrive?
I might need you to restate the question. I'm not sure if I understand how to answer that.
Sure. So I mean, we're going through things. It's building us, it's stretching us, it's growing us. We're discovering things about ourselves during the midst of these adversities. So, what
Mhm.
did you discover about yourself? Maybe some strengths that you didn't think you had? And what were some of those things?
Okay, I get it now. I get the question now. So there's so many things that I could pull from there. You're asking me. I haven't been asked tough questions in a while, and I've done a lot of interviews this week, and it's been a while since someone's had me stumped. Huh? I think my resilience is probably like, see, every time I think to answer that question, there's two parts to it because resilience is the first thing that comes to mind. That's
Hmm.
something that I realize, okay, I'm very resilient and this is something that I know I have. And so I can, get through things and overcome them. But then at the same time, was that something new to me that was brought to my attention is the question. Like, that's what I'm kind
Yeah.
of wondering. Like, I don't know if I ever not knew that was there. I think I just made it stronger. It's like trying to figure out how to explain this. So it's like there's certain things that I always knew were in me. Like, let's say being an actress, for example. People ask
Hmm.
simple questions like that in interviews. Usually it's like, what made you want to be an actress? That's a typical question, right? Like, when did you decide to be an actress? That's one of those things where it was always there. I don't ever remember not wanting to be an actress. It's just something that I knew was in me, and I just grew over time, and I nurtured and developed that to where I got even better at it. I could say the same thing for any skills or talents that got me through things. So when it comes to the resilience, that's not something that it's like, oh, I just noticed that resilience is there. Like, it's just always been there because I've always had to deal with one trauma or another. It just
Hmm.
grew and got bigger. And so, and that's why I said, it's kind of like a two-part question, but that would be the first thing that would come to my mind is the resilience. My ability, I guess, there's one, I just got an answer. My ability to handle emergency situations
Hmm. Hmm.
at the spur of the moment. That's a big one because I see so many times, even like in movies and stuff, I tell my kids this all the time. You see people freeze up when major things happen, like in the world type stuff, and they just, it's like, what do you do? Like in movies, it's so easy for them. They're scripted, they're ready for it. But in real life, like most people, they freeze up, they go into shock, they're traumatized instantly, and they have no idea how to handle the situation. Like I have dealt with so many emergency situations where it's like instantly my mind like sees every different direction and possibility that could happen depending on which thing I decide to do right now in a flash. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, now that's a gift. Like that's not something really normal for everyone, I don't think. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that, but it definitely was something that I'm like, okay, that was the discovery for me, I think. To realize that I can do that, and then to experience another emergency situation. I'll tell you a story that's kind of funny, that goes along with what I'm saying. So there was something coming out of our bathroom sink when I was a young girl living with my mom and my two sisters. There was something, I guess, coming out of the bathroom sink. My mom saw it first. She freaks out. She's taking off running down the stairs, out the door, yelling at everybody, come on, get your stuff, gotta go. So imagine you don't know what's happening, but you hear this weird alien sounding noise,
Uh-huh.
and then see your mom screaming and running out the house in her pajamas, like no clothes, no real clothes on or anything. And you panic. Like normally you just run with them, right? That's what we do,
Mm-hmm.
right? But me, in my mind, I need to figure out what is the problem, what is the solution. Like that's just how my mind was working, even at like I had to been somewhere between 12 to 14. I'm not sure the exact age, but even in a moment like that, it was like, we got to get the phone to call an emergency. I got to grab some clothes for my mom because she doesn't have anything on. I got to get my sisters and make sure they're out the house too. I got to see what this is to make sure if I need to fight it. Like it's all this stuff happened at one time in my mind. Come to find out, this is funny. It was the next door neighbor had the plumber over there, and he was running a sewer pipe up through that had somehow come through our sink and out of the bathroom, looked like an alien snake thing or something.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And blood all over the bathroom. My sisters and my mom was out the door. I had the phone. I had clothes to cover my mom up. I handled everything instantly, and even at that young age. I think that was my first realization that this is a gift. Like I do this.
Yeah, yeah. I get that because when you're faced with so much adversity, one thing after another, and
Mhm.
you talked about it coming in pairs sometimes in your life, you do reach a point to where you're like, okay, I am not going to be emotionally reactive
Right,
to a
right.
situation. I'm going to be responsive. So I need to check myself, calm
Mhm.
myself so that I can manage through this because it is here. It is something I'm facing and I've got to get through it. So that's what I hear in that story. And
Yeah.
it's,
No,
yeah.
you're right. Like even like I said, so that's kind of a funny story, but something simple as that, it's like you're right, that trauma almost trains you to be able to do that. So it's like now with my kids, because I've worked so hard to avoid them from ever experience trauma as much as possible. I train them now to plan ahead. Like even from the ages of 2, 3, when they first talk, let me
Hmm.
show you how to unlock my phone and call 911 in case we're in a crash and I can't get
Mm,
phone. Like things like this, you just plan ahead and think as much as possible. If you plan ahead, then there's so many things that you could possibly avoid because you never know what's going to happen, right? So I've always taught my kids that, just to prevent certain things. You never know what you're prevented, and I'd rather prevent things and not know what I could have experienced than experience it and wish I would have planned, right? So that's
mm-hmm.
what I teach them now. I don't know that they'll have that emergency responsive situation in them because they haven't had to deal with trauma like that. But I know I can prepare them in another way to tell them to plan, to try to
Sure.
prevent things and always, know how to handle things when they happen.
Okay, okay. So let's get to the good stuff. You're
Oh,
striving
I like the
to
good stuff.
yeah. I want to hear some triumph stories. Um,
Yes.
but yeah, so like you're at this place where you're handling things and you're making strides towards a better you. What was that first accomplishment, if you can recall it, and what did it feel like coming through that?
Hmm. Ooh, it's another one of those. There's so many good ones that come to mind, but I'm trying to
Yeah.
backtrack all the way to the first one. Probably my first ever show. It was called Let's Make It Happen. The first show that I like produced, directed, starred in. I sung in it, danced in it, did all this stuff. What year was that? That had to have been 2004, 2005, maybe. It was a long time ago.
Mhm.
And that was my first show that I accomplished that just, let me know that I was capable of it, that I could accomplish that, and just made me want to, from that point on, go through whatever I wanted to produce. I just wanted to put my mind to it. More recently would be the book. The book was a huge one. That was a big one that I was dealing with a lot of self-doubt on.
Mm.
And then just pushing that button and going ahead and following through with publishing it. That was huge for me. So yeah, I know I didn't just give you one. I
No,
gave you the
that's
early
hey,
one and the
that's
most recent,
yeah,
but
that's good, girl. That's good. Um, I think that's awesome. And as because I think the first one is very impactful because you're looking adult because like you bring in self-doubt, you're bringing your self-doubt, that fear with you, but then you accomplish and you get through it, and then you're telling me like I saw that I was fully capable of this. So it definitely shaped your outcomes for future goals. And
yeah,
now look, you have a book, and and that
got a
that's
whole production company now.
look at you.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, so it definitely opened up a bigger opportunity for you to really project more into the world to help and to tell your story and show other people that, hey, if I can do it, so can you. It may not look like this, but you definitely can form and define success for yourself. I definitely see that. So, Vitelle, what advice would you offer others that may be going through similar challenges?
Hmm. I feel like I've offered it all already because we've
Yeah.
said so much. We went so deep already. I think the most important one, like I mentioned, that really helped me is just understanding that it won't last always.
Hmm.
Um, just understanding that you will get through it at some point. Um, not dealing with it alone. That's one thing that comes to mind right now.
Mm.
Just not being afraid to reach out and knowing that you are not alone. When you begin to educate yourself on these different traumas and these different things that we deal with, you realize like, wow, everyone deals with this. Like there are so many people that can relate to me, but when you're in it, you feel like you're dealing with it alone. Nobody can understand. All of these things that we tell ourselves that just keep us stuck where we're at when we could be reaching out for help and getting help sooner and not dealing with it alone. So that would be, I guess, my main advice. Understand that it won't
Hmm.
last forever and you don't have to deal with it alone.
Oh, I love that too because just in interviewing several other women, talking about their stories and stuff, a main theme that comes up is it's a moment in time. It's not forever. And you can get through it. And having a support group or network around you, because I know you are a tribal leader. You are
Yeah,
one
right.
but you understand the importance of having like-minded people come beside you to help uplift you because you need that sometimes. You do need that. And it's important to have people that have maybe even already gone the way because then you can learn from them and you can grow from them as well too. Um, I love it. So, Vitelle, how can people get in contact with you outside of this podcast if they're looking to engage or connect?
Mhm. Absolutely. So there's a couple different ways. One is right here on my screen. It's Vitelle.net. Wait, I'm pointing the wrong way right there. Vitelle.net is my website. That's where you can go to see what projects I have coming up, connect with me through social media and all of that. Also, I have a text number that people can text if you want to connect with me via text message. You can text 770-626-5075. And that is how you can really stay in the loop with what I've got going on with shows and new book releases. And I even do giveaways and all of that stuff for people who take the time to text me there.
Awesome. And then you have a play that's coming up, a show that's coming up. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Nine Lives is coming up in Atlanta. This is about the 14th time I think that I've done this show. This one's coming up at the Atlanta Theater on September 14th at 3 p.m. We may be actually adding an encore presentation soon because we are getting sold out on tickets right now. So we might be adding an additional presentation that day. But as of now, it is 3 p.m. on the 14th, September 14th. And yeah, it's called Nine Lives. I'm really excited to have Garrett Patterson and Carolyn Jones coming back to perform. You can see them there. It's amazing. I don't want to tell you too much about what they do because they're kind of a special guest celebrity surprise, but they're coming back to perform it with me. So it's not necessarily one woman show anymore. They have their special parts as well. But yeah, every single character deals with a different type of trauma. Everyone can relate to this show in some way, whether it's a specific character that you see yourself in or a little bit of each, or overall, you know, just a whole encompasses all of it. But at the end of the day, they all are my testimony. And I just portray it with different characters. And it's really an exciting experience. It's part movie, part play. It's just a whole experience that you just got to be there.
I love it. I love it. All right, everyone. That is Vitelle. Get connected, go see a show, buy the book. She is awesome. And now, until next time, everyone, I'm Angelina Mojica, your life coach, sending you much love, much peace, many blessings.